We like to say that we're never open, but we're always here and you're always welcome.
That was what she was saving for later. Hey, I'm Natalie Mumford.
And I'm Crystal Early.
And we're 3 women. Crystal and I met at a flea market probably about 5 or 6 years ago. We were both selling vintage clothing. We had our own shops. And eventually Crystal asked me to share a booth with her at one of the flea markets.
Yeah, I was self-employed for the first time and working across the street in the neighborhood that our shop is now, the East Village Arts District. And I noticed that this shop was available for rent. So I used my retirement from when I worked at the federal government to fund it and asked Natalie if she wanted to join in 3 women.
3 Women started as a vintage clothing shop, and I would say about 6 months in, we decided to make our first piece using one of Crystal's family heirlooms.
Yeah, the first piece that we made from vintage textiles was taken from my family's Chinese frozen food business in the 1950s. It was called Dragon Foods. So we used a rice bag. We actually have it here today, but we used a rice bag to make our first couple of jackets.
I think that a lot of people gravitated towards the concept. We use a seamstress who's still with us today and her small team locally in Long Beach. They're only about 5-10 minutes away, and just started making pieces when we could afford to, and had the shop selling vintage as well, and then that just slowly grew from there when other people took interest and started an aspect of our business, custom clothing, which was a good way to start as a small brand designer without having, a whole collection done.
Selling at the flea markets, that is a strong community, and that's what makes it easier for us to source. We have our own experience, but we also have a network of people that have been preserving vintage textiles, preserving antiques.
Just from having this space, we built many deep relationships with customers too, and I think that's a really old school way of doing business, is having this custom aspect. When someone could come in and work with Crystal to help select their own fabric, participate in the design process, and create a piece that that's going to resonate with them emotionally. This is something that's going to last forever. It's made to measure. It's one of the most sustainable ways to produce. And because we have this very intimate experience with the customer, it's built all these relationships that are long-standing. And we don't just do it in our space, we do it virtually as well. And you could tell when someone has that interaction with a piece of clothing that they're purchasing, it really inherently makes it more sustainable long-term. They want to take care of it, they want to keep it forever, and that's
Right.
doing our part.
Yeah, sustainability really is about just thoughtfulness. I mean, we're not the first to do this. During the Depression, many women made clothing and other household goods out of
textiles, feed sacks, things that were carrying food.
Yeah.
They started repurposing that because they had to, out of resourcefulness.
That kind of resourcefulness also spawns a certain type of creativity that I don't think would come unless you were being resourceful. When you only have certain fabrics to work with, then something completely unique comes about. So
we love to make halter tops for the summer seasons. These are our hanky halter tops. They're made with 1930s through 1950s cotton handkerchiefs. Each one is one of a kind. They're all printed with different imagery, typically florals. What's incredible about these is that we've never found 2 of the same. So each one is completely one of a kind.
Our first pieces were made from my family's heirloom, which was a rice bag from their Chinese frozen food business in the 1950s in Windsor, Ontario, called Dragon Foods. This is the G-Funk button-up. G-Funk is a music genre out of Long Beach, California. So anyways, it was a funk seed bag. But we call it G-Funk anyways. Okay, the story of this shirt and how everything comes full circle is that this shirt was recently found at the Rose Bowl Flea Market where Natalie and I sell monthly, but it's one of our first pieces that we've ever made. So when we were working at the Rose Bowl Flea Market, I looked over at the next booth and I saw this hanging there. And so I asked Nat, I'm like, is that one of our first pieces? And she said yes. So I went over to the vendor and I said, where did you find this? And he said, oh, at the Goodwill thrift store. Which actually is a great thing, you know? Someone bought it, then they donated it, then this vendor buys it to sell at the Rose Bowl Flea Market, and we're in the next booth. So it's back with us, and I wear it all the time. I absolutely love it. It's such a cool rice bag, tycoon rice. Like, the colors are amazing.
The pieces from my personal collection that we've made over the years, this one is probably one of my favorites. I love old textiles, and this one's very special. It's a 1920s hand embroidered, hand crocheted lace edging, tablecloth, and hand tinted. I love that they're not like the greatest at embroidery, and that I think really speaks to me because you could see all the variations of artwork, you know, in these old pieces. And then this is also a 1920s boudoir pillow for the back. And yeah, this is kind of one of my favorites to wear. This is cool because we were able to make 3, so Crystal has a matching jacket. This is reversible, and it's the original quilt. What's interesting is that this is a 1930s quilt with like vintage 30s, 40s feed sack, but then someone finished the quilt at another point, right? Like this is probably 1960s or 70s, but that's the original backing, and this is completely reversible. And there's 3 of them. This is an example of just like patchworking we've done in the past. This is like a 1970s top, had a lot of stains on it. So patch a rice bag. I like that it's black and white. That's kind of rare to find. It's cool because you could see like the date and the history of every piece of rice bag or fabric because of certain things that happened, right? Like a barcode wouldn't have existed until later. So this is like one of the last cloth rice bags that were made. You know, most of them, I'd say 99.9% of them are now in like woven plastic or cardboard boxes. So you could see the transition of like, okay, we're not going to use cloth bags anymore, and this is one of the last of it.
We've become known for using vintage rice bags for our collection, and we have some over here. Here's the Calrose rice bag in yellow.
Yeah, these have become pretty hard to find, and they're all rare. And
because of that, we've created our own sack, the worldwide sack, and that is right here. I'm wearing the worldwide sack, but worldwide, 3 women we come to love.
Yeah, and this is printed on vintage dead stock fabric. So because these pieces are so hard to find, we want to start incorporating our own print design into our one-of-a-kind pieces, and also small runs like the pullover Crystal's wearing. Mm-hmm. And not sacrifice our values by being, sustainable. So it's all still on vintage dead stock fabric, printed locally and then sewn locally as well. Yeah, I think our mission statement, our values are based on community and people and experiences. We think that, the textiles and the garments that we make hold a lot of value themselves, but the connections we've built around them is the most meaningful long term. Right.
And the way that we've brought people to 3 women because of these fabrics that have really resonated so strongly, either there's a nostalgia that's evoked or a sentimentality, and it has brought a lot of people, like way more than I could have ever imagined, into 3 women, and it's all comes from a rice sack,
Yeah.